We're on the bottom line of Yud Amud Bet, okay? 10b5 if you're following in the art scroll. And we are learning the Patach Pitcha, how they opened up how each one of these rabbis opened up the conversation. They opened up their class about Megillah. So the Gemara says, Rav Dimi bar Yitzchak patach la pitcha lahai pashata mehacha. Rav Dimi bar Yitzchak, he would open up the conversation, the learning of Masechet about Megillah mehacha from here. The pasuk says, Ki avadim anachnu uba'avdutenu lo azavanu. We were slaves, and even though we were enslaved, lo azavanu Eloheinu, our God did not abandon us. Vayet alenu chesed lifnei malchei paras, and He granted us kindness from before the kings of Persia. So each time we had to figure out, what was the indication from this pasuk that made this pasuk specifically about the story of Purim? Like as an example, let's say the pasuk says, "And Hashem saved the Jewish people," and he would say, "Oh, that's the story of Purim." Why is it the story of Purim and not the story of the guy who thought that he was meat when he had a delicious kusha b'jibin, and it turned out that it wasn't meat, it was TVP, so he was kosher and he was able to eat it. Maybe that's what the pasuk is talking about, right? And in the end, we would figure out each pasuk what indicated in that pasuk specifically about the story of that salvation of Purim. Here is quite easy. It says, "Vayet alenu chesed," and He gave us kindness in front of the kings of Persia. Right? Where did we find kindness in the eyes of the kings of Persia? Right? When did that happen? Ematai, Bisman, Haman, the time of Haman. Now, it's just an interesting thing I want to point out. If you look back, right? So we have this time. It says this was the time of Haman, right? So that's how it refers to this time. Look earlier. It says. We'll see again. Well, we'll see in just a minute. We don't have to go back because not everyone learned the last session with us together. Let's look at the next one. Rabbi Chanina bar Papa says, "Patach la pitcha lahai pashata mehacha." He opened up the story like this. Hirkavta enosh liroshenu. Hirkavta means like you fitted, like you put on a man to be on top of us. Banu ba'eshu b'mayim. We came through fire and through water. Vatotzienu lirvaya, and you took us out lirvaya to abundance, to a lot, to excess. Ba'esh bimei Nebuchadnezzar rasha. In the fire, what's that talking about? That we went through fire. It's the time of Nebuchadnezzar. Why is Nebuchadnezzar called the time of fire? Two reasons. One is Mishael, Chananem, Mishael, Azariah, that they all had to go into the Kivshan Ha'esh. Okay, that's a little bit of a difficult stretch. Why? Because that was something that only 3 people experienced. Over here, it seems like it's saying that you did this for all of us, okay? So the other opinion says, no, it's talking about Nebuchadnezzar, that he burned the Beit HaMikdash in fire, so we as a people went through fire. Uba Mayim, what's Mayim? Mayim is Bimei Paro, during the time of Paro, that the Jewish people went through water. Now that could either mean the time when they drowned all the babies in the water, okay, or it can mean the splitting of the sea. Okay, so we have again 2 alternative possibilities as to why that's mine. But when is this leaving with abundance, going out with everything? Bimei times Haman. Now, if you'd asked me, I would have said that was Egypt.
Right. We're left with abundance.
So why does the Gemara? So one answer is because but Mayim already told you Egypt. So maybe Bamayim and Vatotziel Revaya is Egypt. So I thought of a really interesting answer to this question. Where do you know that word from? We say it on Shabbat. Lirvaya.
When you say Kiddush.
Dishanta Vashem en Roshi. Kosi Revaya. My cup is overflowing. How does the salvation happen in the story of Purim? Through two cups, through the cups of wine, through the 2 parties of wine that Esther does. Now, remember how each time there was 2 possible ways of learning it. One time the esh is in Nebuchadnezzar. One esh is the fire, which is negative, and one esh is the fire, which is positive. One water is the water which is negative, drowning. One water is walking through the water. So one wine is negative. We came up with positive. Where's the negative wine? Excellent. They got punished for Seudat Achashverosh. That he fed them yain. He gave them old wine that was older than each person, and they drank it out of the cups from the Beit HaMikdash. That was the china that he used. So again, we find a negative and a positive. Vatosieni l'rvaya, and rvaya is used in the expression of kosi rvaya, which is my cup overflows with wine. So therefore, it's bimeh Haman. Now here, I wanted to point out something. What do we see at the end? Bisman Haman, in the time of Haman. Over here, vatosieni l'rvaya, bimeh Haman. Why do we choose to call it bimeh Haman and not bimeh Mordechai ve'Esther?
It seems like they're all going based on the.
So over there, in that one, in the second one, that makes sense. Again, remember, if we're giving it the negative interpretation, it makes sense. If you're giving it the positive interpretation, it shouldn't be that way. Right? We should say, instead of Bisman Paro, Bisman Moshe. Yeah? And at least the last one, either way, because the first two, Eshman, you're going through it. Vatosiel Levaya is specifically an expression of being taken out, which is the positive side. So again, it's interesting that in the days of the king, in Persia, which king, what is that? What was that? That's Zman Haman. Why is it not Zman Mordechai? It'll be interesting. We'll come back to it in a minute. Okay?
There be May and Bisman.
Sorry?
That doesn't is different. When you say Bimei in the days of or Bisman in the time of, is there a difference between the two?
I wouldn't imagine. Why would you think so?
I don't know, because sometimes it says Bisman and sometimes it says Bimei. Bimei Nebuchadnezzar and then Bisman Haman.
I don't think so. We also have the Bimei, Vayihi Bimei.
Achashverosh, right.
No, not Vayihi. Vayihi Achashverosh is the pasuk.
Right.
In Ala Nisim, what do we say?
Bimei Mordechai ve'Esther.
Bimei Mordechai ve'Esther. And you also find the other one is Bimei
Bimei
Matityahu, right? So you find that Bimei is used also for negative and positive reasons. Only Vayihi Bimei together, which has that negative connotation. Okay. He remembered his kindness and ve'emunato and his faith lebeit Israel to the house of Am Yisrael. All the corners of the earth saw et Yeshuat Eloheinu, the salvation of our God. When did all of the people see Yeshuat Eloheinu? When did that happen? This is where I got the question from. In the days of Mordechai ve'Esther. We got two examples of the Bimei and Bisman Haman, and over here we go with Bimei Mordechai ve'Esther. Why is that? Why does it swap? Why does it swap the case? Either way, so the simple answer I would give is that the pasuk over here makes no mention of a negative, so therefore it's Bimei Mordechai ve'Esther. Earlier, it's in the second one here. Kafte enosh roshenu banu ba'eshu b'mayim. That is a negative, but Levaya is a positive. So it's half and half. So okay, fine. So we still went with Haman. 2 out of 3 are negative. And then the first one is Avadim Anachnu, also has a negative. So maybe when the pasuk describes a negative time or the negative aspect of that time, even though it then later says Vayet Elenu Chesed, it kind of says Bimei Haman to emphasize the danger we were in. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to point it out to sharpen your acute senses of diuk. Okay, interesting. What is in this pasuk though that makes us think that that's talking specifically about the story of Purim?
Because they went from land to land. It was all the continents.
It says Ra'u kol afse aretz et Yeshuat Eloheinu.
Because Achashverosh ruled over all the provinces of the land, so the whole letters went out to everybody that all.
Okay, so what was there no other time that the world knew about the world knew about a decree?
Because they know the decree all over.
In the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, when God split the sea, Chazal tell us that the water split where? Everywhere. So also, Ra'u kol afse aretz, all the nations of the world saw, all the corners of the earth saw, Yeshuat Eloheinu, they saw the salvation of God. What's the difference?
one is a midrash, and one was actually in the text. It says it went out everywhere. There's nowhere in the text of the Torah that says the water was split everywhere.
Not true necessarily. How do I know? Come on.
It says Mayim like.
No, better. Namogu kol Yoshevei Canaan. What are they trembling in Canaan from? How did they know?
But Canaan, you can also say, is not that far.
It talks about all the kings and all the everyone's trembling. They're shaking. This one. How did they know? Would they watch CNN? For sure, CNN did not report it. By the way, they report terrorists destroy Egypt on the way out of the country that hosted them graciously for 210 years. That's what CNN reported. That's the CNN Haggadah, by the way. Right? Okay, so how did they know? The answer is that they knew. What's the difference? The difference is very interesting. In the story of Misraim, everybody knew that they were saved. Good, got it. But they were not in danger everywhere.
That's true.
What point in history was the danger against the Jews everywhere in the world? Never. Only here. Because Achashverosh ruled over the whole world, and when the Gezerah came out against, in the art scroll over here, they said that the letters went out. In terms of the letters, that's the same as Egypt. But the difference over here was that the Gezerah was everywhere.
Yeah, but in Egypt, didn't need to be everywhere because we were centralized.
What do you mean?
We were all in Egypt.
No, that's true. But the Kiddush Hashem happened that they were in danger in every land, in every civilized land. Everywhere that people were, they were in danger in that place, and then the Jewish people were saved in that place. So in each place there was a Yeshua that everyone saw that the Jews went from here to here. In Timbuktu, and they saw the water splitting, like who cares? It's not relevant to them at all about the slavery in Egypt and then vice versa. Okay. Although, I believe that the Nile runs all the way down to Asia, doesn't it? So maybe in Timbuktu they found out. Okay, fine, let's move on. Rish Lakish, huh?
Right, the Nile only went through Africa.
Does it? I thought it runs all the way to Asia.
Oh, I mean, Asia's
It's Middle East,
northeast
it's right
of
there.
Africa.
Right. So you're looking down. I think it stretches from one place to the other. You have to check.
Are you sure?
I don't know. You have to check. I mean, it can be. Well, maybe the Nile stretched like Batya's hand. Okay. Rish Lakish. I've never been to the Nile, I'll tell you that. Okay. Rish Lakish patach la pitcha. Rish Lakish, how did he open up the story of the Megillah? Lahai pashata mehacha. He learned it from here. He opened up from here. Ari nohem, the lion roars. Vidov shokek, and it's again another word. Shokek is also another word for roaring. Vidov shokek, moshel rasha al amdal. A rasha was ruling over an impoverished people. Amdal. Says the Gemara, Rish Lakish explained, Ari nohem, ze Nebuchadnezzar rasha. That's Nebuchadnezzar. Why is the lion Nebuchadnezzar? Dichtiv be, because it says, Allah aryeh misubcho. The lion came out from its hiding place. And who's that talking about specifically? It's written, that pasuk is written about Nebuchadnezzar, when he emerged from his place to come destroy Eretz Yisrael, destroy Beit HaMikdash. Dov shokek. Who's Dov shokek? Ze Achashverosh. That refers to Achashverosh. Now, why does Dov shokek refer to Achashverosh? It says by him, Ve'aru chive ahare tinina dame ledov. Okay, and another animal we say Ve'aru chive ahare, another one, tina, a second one, dam ya ledov, is compared to a bear. So again, when it's referring to Ahashverosh, okay, Daniel, he describes each one of the galuyot, he describes them in a different way. Famously, we describe the galut of Paras Umadai, okay, those are together. So you have galut Bavel, you have galut Paras Umadai, you have galut Yavan, and you have galut Romi or Edom. Those are the four galuyot. The description of the galut of Paras is described as Misurbal Kadov, which means hairy like a bear. That was the Persians. I don't want to say anything that you learn out of that, but there's that they were called hairy like a bear. And of course, the lesson is not about their Oh my gosh, I'm trying to. There's a great word. No, there's a great word. That was not about their hirsute nature. I was reaching for the word. That's a nice one for Yahoo. Yahoo, Yahtzee. Hirsute means someone who has a lot of hair. All right. So it's not is that a wordle recently? Are you a word guy?
No, I just
You just know that one. Okay, great. Right? It was not his Mag and David? Up top. Right? This is not that is not his hirsute nature. Right? It did not come from there. Right? Misurbal kadov. It doesn't mean that that's not the point is not that they were hairy. It describes the nature of the type of Yetzer Hara that was associated with that galut. Each galut had its own Yetzer Hara. Yavan, the Yetzer Hara was the Yetzer Hara of the wisdom of the deification of man. That was the idea of Yavan, and indeed, from Yavan, from Greece, came the idea of what's it called? Of the Olympics, of the worship of the perfection of the human body. But the perfection of the human body in Yavan represented an idea that we didn't need. We didn't need a God. We as humans, we were perfect. We were the center of the universe. So they denied God through their obsession over the human body.
That's why no Brit Milah.
That's one of the reasons they bring why no Brit Milah, because they felt, number one, that it was a desecration of the body, but number two, remember, part of the idea of Brit Milah, and specifically the cutting of the orla, is to take the seat of passion in a man, and to reduce the seat of passion, to say that it's a human's job to rise up and to control his desires and his passions. For a Greek, that was the anomaly. That was the opposite of what they believed in. They believed in what the body wants is divine. And the idea of Greek and Roman orgies, it came from that. It wasn't just that they were an immoral people, right? It was that the bodily desires were not something to be tamed or restrained or controlled, but the opposite. They were meant to be given free reign. Okay, so let's continue. Vitani. So Achashverosh is compared in the prophecy of Daniel is compared to a dove, to a bear. Vitani Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef taught us, Elu parsiim sheochlim v'shotim kedov. What is the bear? These refer to the Persians, that they would eat and they would drink like a bear. Umisurbalim basar kedov. And they were covered. They were very big people, and they were expansive. They were muscular, and they were large. The Persian hordes, if you will, that took over from Babel, that was the world power. So Persia actually at the time conquered Babylonia and became the seat of world domination, of world power. Umigadlin se'ar kadov. And at this point, we're referring to the fact that they're hairy. I wanted to illustrate that because up until that point, that's not what we meant, okay? Umigadlim se'ar kadov, and they also were, they had very prominent hair. Ve'en lehem menucha kedov. And like a bear also, they would never rest. And I always love this because what's the one thing you know about a bear? Hibernates. It rests for a very long time. You know what the answer is? The answer is not that the bear rests. It's that the bear is unconscious for months at a time. But any time that the bear is up and awake, it moves. It's constantly moving. It's very interesting. I don't know if you ever see one of these documentaries about polar bears, right? They're constantly on the move, even when they're not going anywhere. They're just walking. What drives them to walk? A lion, on the other hand, is the opposite. The lion sits and sleeps for most of the day, every day. It hunts only when absolutely necessary, right? So they're the opposite. They're conserving all their strength. The dove had a wanderlust. It was always on the move. It was always restless. Nothing was ever enough, and that was the nature of that galut as well. So Moshe Rasha, what does it mean that a wicked person was placed as a ruler? Zehaman al Amdal refers to the poor nation Who's a poor nation? Elu Yisrael, shehem dalim min mitzvot, that they were impoverished in terms of the mitzvot that they kept. Now, this is an interesting thing. This idea that they were poor from the mitzvot. Where do we find it? Now, when it comes to Egypt, we have many lessons telling us that the Jewish people did not have mitzvot. At Erom ve'Eriyah, we have what's it called? Tells us by Kriyat Yamsuf, the Malach Uzzah says to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Elu ovdei avodah zarah, Elu ovdei avodah. Why are you saving these and killing these? The Jewish people their mitzvot were depleted. Where do we find that the Jewish people's mitzvot were depleted in the story of Ahashverosh? What we find is that they went to the party, and later on we're going to see that there are reasons brought in the Gemara for why the Gezerah was levied against them. But do we find that they didn't have any mitzvot? So it's over here. It just says, the poor, a Rasha was ruling over a poor people. That's the Jewish people. Why were they poor? Because they had no mitzvot. This is the first I'm hearing about that. Why they called dalim min mitzvot? So we'll have to see in just a minute. I have a theory on that, but we might need to circle back when we learn something else together. Rabbi Elazar patach la pitcha la pashat hameacha. Rabbi Elazar, so that's how Rish Lakish opened his. Rabbi Elazar would open up with this derasha. Ba'asaltaim yimach hamikare. Right, atzaltaim means like from a word atzel, right, from being lazy, right. Ba'asaltaim, with laziness, yimach hamikre, the ceiling like falls apart. Yimach is more than just gets destroyed or falls apart. Yimach is like it almost like it disintegrates. Would probably be the best word that I could think of for yimach. Okay. Sorry? That's with the chet. Right? That's like Timched, Zecher Amalek. But we also have another example of that where it means falls down in the pasuk in the Torah where Kimach achicha or Chiyamuch achicha. And the translation over there is where your brother falls because of poverty. So we're using that interpretation of the word mach over here, where the ceiling falls through laziness. Ubishiflut yadayim, and with a lowliness, right? Shafel, lowliness of the hands. Yidlof habayit, the house will spring a leak. Okay, so what are we talking about over here? Is this home insurance? What are we talking? Why is the pasuk? What is the pasuk hinting to us? Rabbi Elazar explained, Bishvil atzlut shaya lehem Yisrael, because of the laziness of the Jewish people, shelo asku b'Torah, that they did not study enough Torah, naaseh sonoo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu mach. The one that God hates became poor or fell down. This idea of soneh, it's almost like an antonym. So we're using, whenever we want to say something bad about something, what do we say? Something bad happens, lo alenu, right? Or in Arabic, what's the exact translation of lo alenu? Bar minan, not on us, right? Lo alenu, not on us, bar minan. So when we talk about something bad happening, we don't want to say it's happening to us. So what do we say instead? That it's happening to... Yes, exactly. It's happening to Sonehem Shel Yisrael, to the ones, right? Where else do we find, who else does this? Paro himself. And when war will break out, right? And they'll join our enemies, and they'll leave the land. What do you care if they're going to leave the land? Alam min haaretz was a euphemistic way of saying that we're going to leave the land. But you don't want to say the ayin on yourself, so you put it on someone you don't like. So that's what the Gemara over here is doing. The Gemara is saying that because of the atzlut, because of the fact that they were lazy in Torah, right? What happened? Shelo asku b'Torah. The enemy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Who's the enemy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this instance? The Jews, yeah, right? Mach, the Jewish people fell. Okay. Let's continue. Ve'en mach ela ani. Mach is only ani. Shnei amar, as it says, ve'im machu me'erkecha. And if he is too poor for to make an erech, what does erkecha mean? There used to be in the time of Beit HaMikdash, a person would say, I'm donating, what do we say, Shemit Nadev, one-on-one donate Beit HaKnesset. What did they used to say? I'm donating erki, my worth, to the Beit HaMikdash. I'm donating if someone's not well, I'm donating my wife's, my daughter's erech to the Beit HaMikdash. And the Pasuk tells you, how do you figure out what's the erech, what's the value? Sorry?
One of the parashiyot goes through people's work.
Behar, right?
One of them. I had to read it once.
Right, yeah, sure. Erkecha Kodesh, right? I believe it's Behar. So when we talk about the worth of a person, right? So in the worth of a person,
So there's no way I would have volunteered to read a double parashah.
right? So when you give the worth of a person, so the pasuk says, "What if umachu me'erkecha?" But the person who gave that value, he said, "Oh, I'm going to give the value of this," but the guy can't afford me'erkecha from the assessment that you made on the value of that person. Okay, says the Gemara, "Ve'en mikare." We don't have a roof. Ela hakadosh baruch hu. You don't have a roof. Only hakadosh baruch hu. Shnei amar hamikare b'mayim aliotav. That hakadosh baruch hu, he roofs. He puts the upper parts of the shamayim. He puts water there. Where do we have this? Masechet Ta'anit, where we talked about the water that exists in the shamayim, and we brought that amazing article that talks about how there's more water in one sea lake that there is on the entire earth. That was in the house still. Cubic water volume in this one lake, so to speak, of water in the sky than there is in the entire earth. So you see over here also that God is called Hamikare, Ma'am Aliyotav. In Mikare, Ela Kadosh Baruch Hu. I always love this. Why do I love this? Because what happens when someone tries to deny God? What do we say? It's not Hashem. What do we say? It's nature. It's coincidence. How do you say coincidence in Hebrew? Mikre. En mikre ela kadosh baruch hu. So en mikare ela kadosh baruch hu, but also en mikre there is no coincidence but God. So again, Rabbi Elazar would bring this pasuk, and he would say that this pasuk encapsulated the entire story of the Jewish people during the time of Purim, right? And that the reason why it happened was because the Jewish people were poor. And the reason why they were poor is because they were lazy from Torah. Who did they make poor? They made either the Jewish people were poor, or alternatively, they made God himself poor, so to speak, in his inability to be able to save the Jews because of his own rules. So God, so to speak, said, if you remember, by the way, the Gemara said the person sees troubles coming to him, what should he do? Yifashvesh b'ma'asav, look through your actions. What did you do wrong? See if you can find the reason why you're being punished. You can't find the reason, says the Gemara. What should you assume? No reason. You didn't do anything wrong.
Not looking hard enough.
That's what I would say. Look again, right? Gemara says, Bitul Torah.
Oh, wow.
And if the person did not do Bitul Torah, zero Bitul Torah. Not sure who this Gemara is relevant for. Right? There's one person that I know is relevant for. I think they say about the Sha'agat Aryeh, was a tremendous Torah scholar. So towards the end of his life, he is sitting there and he's asking them on his deathbed, pass me this Gemara, pass me that Gemara. He was looking to make sure that he remembered everything when he's going to Shamayim. So he'll have his Ashrei Mishmi Sheba Lekan. Praiseworthy is he who comes here, v'talmudo biyado, and his Talmud is in his hand. He's able to. So he's passed me this Gemara. Anyway, one of the guys, the people there, they made a motion. They saw the life was draining out of him. So they made a sign, pass him the Ma'avar Yabok. Ma'avar Yabok is the book that they used to have that they would give to people to save vidui from.
Right.
The Shagat Ayeh said, no, it's okay. He says, I have nothing to save vidui on. And I didn't, from the time I was young, not only did I never sin, he said, I don't have any sins. I don't know if he said I'll never sin, maybe he did teshuvah, right? Because we say, En tzaddik ba'ad yaseh lo yachta. I don't have anything to do teshuvah on, and I never wasted any time learning, from my Torah. So I guess the Sha'agat for him alone, that Gemara was written. They thought of him when they wrote it. But for the rest of us, right? Where does that ever go? But over here in the story of Purim, there was a bitul Torah. By the way, it's interesting. How do we know this is true? The Midrash tells us that when Haman came after the tide seemed to be turning against Haman, he stopped a child in the street, and what did he say? Psok li psukecha. Tell me your pasuk. And the kid told him, this is what they were learning about. We're learning about the komets. And we'll learn this later. And Haman said, your komets, your fistful of flour, the komets that you were learning about, was worth more than my 10,000 talents of silver. So normally you learn that they were saying the komets, and from that actually, one of the lessons we learn from that is that when a person studies the laws of the korban, HaKadosh Baruch Hu counts it as if they brought the korban. Why? Because otherwise, how did the komets outdo his 10,000 talents? They didn't have Beit HaMikdash. They didn't bring the korban. The answer is that, but there's another way of understanding it. The other way of understanding it is that Haman knew that his ability to defeat them was dependent on what? On them not learning Torah. So in order to see if he had a chance, he stopped a random kid and he said, Psok li psukecha, what are you up to? What are you learning? The fact that the kid answered that pasuk or another pasuk was not so relevant. The fact that the kid answered with a pasuk that they had just learned illustrated to him that they were learning Torah again. And where do we find this? How do we know this is true? Because who does Haman come from? From a long and undistinguished lineage of Amalek. When is the first time Amalek attacks the Jewish people as a nation?
In the desert.
In the desert. When do they leave? What happens?
The fight.
Right? What happens? Good. You're talking about Nechashalim Acharecha. Good. But you're missing the main point. By that point, they already attacked them. When they attacked them, it says the Jewish people left Refidim. And that's when Amalek comes. Say the Chachamim. Refidim is an amalgam of words. Rafu Yadayim. Their hands were weak. They stopped learning Torah. Rafu Yadehem. Torah mitzvot. So when their hands stopped learning Torah, when they stopped with their weapon, Hakol Kol Yaakov, Amalek who comes from Esav, that's when he gets his power. So if the Jews stop learning, what happens? Stop praying. That's when Amalek comes to the fore and he's able to take over. So also over here we're finding Ba'asaltaim, when they were lazy from learning, that caused the roof came down. And shiflut yadayim is a hint. It's trying to make you remember Refidim, which is Rafu Yadehem, Yidlof Habayit, the leak starts to, the roof starts to leak. By the way, I love this idea. If you have to remember, we said the ceiling becomes poor. And what do we say? Who's the ceiling? The ceiling refers to God. Why? Because what does it say about God? En mikre el HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because God, He roofs the ceiling with water. So we're really giving you a mashal here, ubeshiflut yadayim, and with our lazy hands, with our weak hands, yidlof habayit. Where does the leak come from? The roof, not, so to speak, being able to do its job. How do we call the roof? B'mikare b'shamayim aliotav, right? Got that? So we're describing, so to speak, like things getting through the cracks of God's hands, if you will, because we, by our actions, force Him to not intervene. Okay, let's carry on. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak patach la pitcha la pashat hamehacha. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak would start with this: Shir Amalot lule Amonai shayalanu yom ana Yisrael. Oh, we have 2 minutes? Okay, let's finish in the next 2 minutes. But not for the fact that God, Shahayalanu, was that He was with us. Yomar na Yisrael. The Jewish people should say it, right? Lule Hashem Shahaya lanu bikum alenu Adam. If not for the fact that Hashem was with us, when a man, bikum alenu Adam, when a man rose against us. Adam velo melech. When is there a time when someone attacks you where they're not the person in charge, and still they have the capacity to be able to attack a nation? And that's Haman. That Haman is Adam and not the Melech. Good? Okay, let me get you a little bit deeper, and then that's where this will end. How do you know Adam refers to Haman? Okay, it's Adam, he's not a king, but he's the second in command that does something. I get it that it's not so common. It's not common that the second in command is going to be running the floor, right? Beautiful. The Sfarim say, the Gemara quotes about the Jewish people, Atem kiruyim Adam, you are called Adam, ve'en ovdei kochavim mazalot kiruyim Adam. So let's say the pasuk will say something, Adam ki yakri mikem. So Adam means a Jew. Why? Because the Jews are called Adam. Ve'en ovdei kochavim mazalot, the nations of the world are not called Adam. So all the Sfarim ask, what do you mean? You're telling me that non-Jewish people are not people? You don't call them human? The Torah is racist? So I saw the most magnificent answer. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean that there are other words that you could use to describe a human being. Okay? Ish is a man. Right? Enosh. So listen to this. This is gorgeous. The reason why the Jewish people are called Adam is because of the incredible achdut that the Jewish people have. The word Adam has no plural. What's the plural of the word Adam? There is none. Adam means no such word. Ish has anashim. Isha has nashim. So what word do you give to a human being who's capable of achieving a sense of unity to the point where there is no plural expression? That's Am Yisrael. Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged ahar. So why we call Bikum Alenu Adam when the man stood against us? Because what was Haman's complaint to Achashverosh? And our rabbis say, really, to God, to the Melech, Yeshno, there's one nation, Am Echad, Mefuzar u'Mefurad v'Na'amim, they're separated. So Bikum Alenu Adam was, Haman stood up against us. But what did he use to stand up against us? He brought Adam, Bikum Alenu Adam. He held Adam against us. Because there's only one nation that's a complaint against. Yeshno Am Echad, that's Mefuzar u'Mefurad. All other nations also spread apart. But we expect them to be. They don't have that sense of unity that Am Yisrael had. So therefore, Bikum Alenu Adam is a reference to Haman. But it also teaches us again that Amalek's koach, his strength, is only power that we give to him. And they cannot do a single thing against us unless we stop learning Torah, unless we stop with our unity, etc., etc. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen.